What's up, guys? GP here back with another episode of the Midwest Cannabis Podcast brought to you by Respect My Region. Today, I am joined by Blake Wilkins. He is a general manager over at Green Koi, which is a dispensary out of Michigan. How you doing, Blake?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, guys.
Of course. So, I always like to start with how you got into the cannabis industry. A lot of people are trying to find a way in and they don't know exactly what they need to do to get in. So, I know you said you started in the Maryland market, but kind of take us through how you found your way in the cannabis market.
Um, I feel like my first introduction to like retail cannabis was my study abroad program. We went to Amsterdam, and that was my first experience of going to a coffee shop. They had this cannabis names, the cultivars like name with the percentages and the price, and I was like, oh shoot, I love this. This is a menu. I didn't get that in the States. Everything
Yeah.
was very like, I don't know the name of this, but it's like loud, it smacks like. So I feel like from that I was so intrigued with knowing the different strains. So I got into Leafly, and so that was kind of me with like cannabis, But then in 2017, Maryland started doing they actually started opening up dispensaries. And one of my college friends started working in one, and she was like, I think you'd be really great at this. And I was like, okay, let's see what's happening. And so she recommended me. I interviewed, and I got a job as a bud tender. In the first kind of period of training, we started talking about terpenes, and I was like, I was a biology major and at Marymount, so like that gave me like, oh snap, we got chemicals in here, like this is my jam, like I can do this.
Right.
And I think focusing on that education changed like a lot for my store, my team, and myself. And I think like a educated focus for cannabis was something that a lot of people weren't bringing into dispensaries, and so I think that kind of like just set me apart from the people we worked with in the industry, and also just the dispensaries that I worked at. Because you come to anywhere I work at, we're letting you know we have product knowledge, we got cannabis
Right.
education, and we're always just focused about the community. So it's like that's how I got into it. I was like trying to like keep on not segueing to anything else, but
No, I completely understand. And when you get into the cannabis space, how long did it take you to feel confident in like product knowledge and be able to? And obviously, products are always changing. You're always getting new strains. But how long would you say it takes somebody to be confident and to be able to present themselves well to customers?
uh, I'd say about 3 to 4 months. It shouldn't be. I'm not gonna say it shouldn't be, but it typically I'd say it should be 90 days. I took it's called THC University. I took a couple courses from that just for like my own tuition because I was like, man, I need to know some stuff. And like we didn't
Mhm.
have GTA. The store, company I was working at the time didn't have a lot of education training. They just had kind of like retail training, like how to sell, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like how to understand the product, how to understand the consumer, how to understand the different
Right.
consumption methods. And taking that course, which everyone kind of laughed at me at first. They were like, "You're paying $50 to like take a course of cannabis," and I was like, "I want to, this is something I want to do."
Yeah, and you
And
went to college, so like, you were paying way more for classes you didn't want to take.
you get me? So fifty
Yeah.
dollars to like know more about cannabis, something I'm already consuming. I was like, that was
Right.
nothing. And I passed each course within like the time that they gave me, which was about 4 weeks for each segment, and went from uh, dispensary knowledge, cannabis knowledge to consumption knowledge. And I became a supervisor literally after that period because I gave
Oh,
them my
wow.
certificates, and they were like, okay, this guy's on his stuff. And then I was dependable because every time they
Yeah.
asked me to come in to like for a shift because someone called out, they were like, I'm available, I'm not doing anything. And it just cascaded into me going into management.
That's nice. That's nice. So now that you are at the management level, what's a day to day like for your position? And now you're in Michigan. I guess we should talk about that. You now work at obviously in Green Koi in Michigan. What's it like day to day being a general manager there?
So, and they're probably gonna give me like a side eye. So when I first applied, like when I was coming from Maryland, I was a general manager of a store. So I
Okay.
was just managing the store, managing like my team and understanding my community. Coming to Green Koi, I'm the general manager of the company. So when it
Gotcha.
comes to like policy, when it comes to practices, when it comes to like how we're managing our marketing and managing our engaging with our community,
Hmm.
that's like that's all me. So like I didn't
Right.
even I at first I was like, wait a minute, do they know? Or and I really had to kind of put on the hat on and just like of being like, look, I gotta create this policy because I'm familiar with
Hmm.
um working in the cannabis industry, so I know what works for my team members. I know it works for the sustainability of having policies that like need like when it comes to like attendance or when it comes to like doing like benefits for people. Like I
Right.
had to really get creative with one meeting my team who I'm not familiar with Michigan, so understanding like their backgrounds, understanding what they're
Yeah.
familiar with, understanding like
Mhm.
what this community is about, like what's their expectation, what drives them. I had to learn all those things, and then kind of apply it to what's a sustainable practice, what's a sustainable policy for Green Koi. So my day to day was really policy building, SOP creation, training my team to understand metric, understand my team to understand product knowledge. So it really was a ground up experience. So
Mhm.
like my day to day wasn't my day to day in Maryland. It's
Right.
it's way more higher
But do you feel
level.
like in Maryland that helped prepare you for now? Because now you understand like that base level of retail to where, because now you're at more of like a corporate level working. So like, but you still need the knowledge of like the
If I didn't
retail.
come from an MSO, I think it would have been very difficult. I came in Maryland. I was working at a multi-state operating company in Michigan. I'm working at a mom and pop in a resort area. So though it may be mom and pop, it gets crazy from April to the end of October.
Okay.
So I was telling them, I was like, you guys keep saying mom and pop, but we're not doing mom and pop numbers. Okay, we're doing like MSO numbers. I
Yeah.
feel like when I came to Michigan, I wasn't even revenue wise, I don't think I was even reaching what we do on a day to day in Michigan. So I think everything kind of it forced me to definitely like elevate myself because one I love a challenge, but two, I'm coming in with a hindsight of like how management should be, and that it's there's pieces that are missing in like what I've experienced in not being a manager and being a team member, but also talking to people in the industry that there's certain things that are missing in our management that are making people lackluster the cannabis experience. People are like getting out because either there's not good management or people not thinking of how to be a good manager, which I'm not saying that there's like a book about it, but I
Right.
think we think about it one way, and coming from who I was trained by, it's like it's so many different facets to be a manager that you have to focus on that because when you're working with people, they depend on you so much. And so I kind
Right.
of had to like uh just recreate that for myself and produce it for my team in Michigan because it's definitely different. States are definitely different. Michigan, the Midwest, and the East Coast, it's
Right.
completely
Right.
completely different.
And so we don't have to talk about the general culture of the places, but in terms of like cannabis culture, have you noticed a difference? Was it more accepting in Maryland than it is in Michigan, or vice versa? Is it what would you say on that?
Maryland, in because of where Maryland is, it was so easy to bring people into cannabis. They already are familiar with it because of DC. Or there's already there's studies being done at universities like John Hopkins. So it was almost like we were meeting the customers where they were at. They were already curious about cannabis, so all we had to do was give them the final pieces of education.
Hmm.
In Michigan, So we're 20 minutes from this city called Holland, and they're, oh
Okay.
my gosh, they're probably gonna like. I hope they don't see this because they're gonna like probably smash me to smithereens. But Holland is super. I'm not. It is religious. Like it is super
Alright.
religious. It has about 4 different. Uh, what would you call them? Mega churches.
Okay.
So that's in our backyard. So while we're over here, trying to sell, teach, and educate people about cannabis, you have a city that's like right next to us that's very like, Dad, no, don't. There's billboards that says don't. Smoking is making you like not smart, or it's
Mm.
it's anti
A
freedom
lot
for
of push
cannabis.
against it.
A lot of prejudice going on, so it makes it very difficult to reach the audiences that like are looking for relief with cannabis,
Mhm.
because everyone's looking at them being like, why are you going there? Like, do you know that's the devil's lettuce or something like that? So
Right.
not as accepting as Maryland at all, but
I see. That's
yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. But in your time in Michigan, have you seen the quality of products increase? Because I know it's recently recreational, and I know you said you've only been there a few years at this point, but have you seen the quality in the dispensaries go up in that time?
Quality of dispensaries, I feel like the dispensaries that I've been to,
Mm.
I haven't had like oh, this is a great experience, or like, you know what, this person really was caring about like my experience. I think I went into one dispensary that I'm not going to name because they're super popular. I walked in. It was my first time there,
Mhm.
and after they checked me in, they asked me if it was my first time there, and I was like, "Well, you would know if you checked me in, and it would have said like history, or your
Right.
POS would have said something about this is
Yeah.
not my first time, or this is my first time." Um, and then the second, like when I got to a bud tender, I was coming. I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for some pre rolls," and they're like, "Okay." And I was like. So after I told them, I was like, "Do you have an industry discount?" They're like, "We have an employee discount," and I'm like, "Okay." So I was like, "Look, I'm a general manager at this dispensary down south. If you guys stop by, we have a 15% off that we give away for anyone who's in the industry. Just show us, anything that will prove that you're in the industry." And after that, the dude like turned his whole energy around and was like engaging, asked me questions, like trying to
Yeah.
figure out which pre-roll I wanted. And I was like, this is what I should have got when I first asked you that I was looking for a pre-roll.
Right.
Not
Right.
after the fact where you think that like this relationship's gonna like be
Benefits you.
mutually beneficial for us
Yeah.
both. But like, no, man, you dropped the ball.
I got you. I got you. That's interesting. I've been wanting to go over to some Michigan dispensaries, and like we talked about before the episode, a lot of that's because of price for us coming from Illinois over into Michigan, because we have some ridiculous price stuff over here. But and also you guys have a lot more variety though, because you guys have so many brands and so many different storefronts available, and we just have a couple at this point.
In Maryland, we had basically everybody that Chicago has. Like that's really everybody from Chicago was like, boom, let me just go to Maryland. We're gonna start everything. So you got Cresco, you got Avexia, Verano there, GTI Rhythm. In Michigan, you literally only basically have Cresco out of that group of people that came over here. I don't think Green Thumb's Rhythm is coming over here. Verano only has a dispensary here. They have Zenleaf.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a plethora of like products. But
Right.
because of that, like I won't say there's always quality. The first person someone tells me they're selling an edible, I'm like, what's your cutting oil? Like, what are you doing the oil with?
Mhm.
Distillate? Great. I don't need another distillate edible on my shelf. Like, give me
Yeah.
some like full spectrum. Give me RSO. Give me a cured butter. Like, get adventurous. Get creative with your product. Don't just give me another SKU. Like brands like 1906. Like that's a new brand for me that I didn't have in Maryland, and they're like a pill that's like fast acting, and
Yeah.
they're using like herbaceous plants
It's
to
nice.
kind of
Yeah,
carry like the effects that they're driving. I like that. Like that's my jam. Like do
for
something like
sure.
that's experimental. That's gonna really rock the industry. You know.
And do you see the customers in your experience becoming more educated with this? Like they're coming to the store like looking for these specific things and it helps with the offering? Have you saying you think that's reaching that point or we still have some work to do?
It's still some work to do. It depends on the dispensary. Like for me and like my team, like I tell them like, look, you're only going to have about maybe 10, 15 minutes with each customer. We shouldn't be dropping down all this knowledge that they're not about to retain when they leave the store. So I focus on making sure that vendors who we work with, that they give us like product cards so that we can give them out to customers. So it's like, look, this is the product, this is how it works. You can take it home with you so you can like read more about it. So it's not like this one transaction we're trying to drop all this information. It's like, no,
Yeah,
here's some notes, do your own homework, do your own knowledge. So
like
if
we'll be
dispensaries
here.
aren't, you know, giving that to them,
Yeah.
they're only leaving with products. And if the products doesn't detail anything on their stuff, they're not going to be looking at it. So it has to be a meeting of minds, meeting of interests.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. And you starting out being a bud tender at the very beginning and getting to the point you're at now, do you think that's like kind of a realistic rise for people? Like, can you rise within the cannabis industry starting as a bud tender? Do you think that's possible overall?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I will say, like, for when I hire people, I give everyone a 90-day period. It's like in that 90-day period, this is what we'll offer you. This is what we'll expect for training. After that 90-day period, if you pass that, like, you can do anything because you've taken the time to, go through the trains that we've given you. You've sometimes we have them set up their metric training so they can do their metric tests. So it's really, I like make sure that this is a partnership because I don't expect anyone to be at the dispensary I'm managing forever. Because I don't plan on being at the dispensary that I'm managing right now forever. Because there's like
Right.
growth and development. There's going to be other
Mhm.
opportunities that I hope will present itself to me because I built a discipline in this industry.
Mhm.
So I do believe like anyone from a bud tender, like I've known plenty of bud tenders I've hired that are now either supervisors at the dispensaries I've managed or managers because it's now I won't say it's not hard to do the job, but like a lot of this is not difficult. A lot of it's really building a muscle memory once you understand the back end. But if you don't have like the cannabis knowledge and understand how products work and how they administer throughout the body, it is going to be difficult. But once you get that foundation, the rest of it is just retail operations. You
Right.
know,
Just standard retail operations.
yes,
That
yeah,
makes sense because I know a lot of people who do want to get into the industry and they're kind of nervous. They don't know because if you are in like an MSO type of space, sometimes I feel like that growth can be hard at the dispensary level. So I also talk to people about if cannabis is your passion and that's what you want to do, you may have to be willing to move. I mean, you moved, I've moved. Like that's just kind of how because I used to live in Texas before I moved. I lived
oh
here.
wow.
So it takes sacrifice sometimes if that's really the space that you want to exist in my opinion.
No, I will say the one fast, and I let people know because they do ask me, how fast did it take for me to get into a leadership role.
Mhm.
So the store, like Green Thumbs was opening up like multiple locations, and like I was started at one location, and they were about to open up another license, and at that license they wanted me to go there to help out, and there was no AGM at the time, or there might have been an AGM at the time, but there was a lot of movements going around, so there was open positions. So I will
Mhm.
say that moving to areas where uh, licensing are starting to look for employment. Anyone like any state that literally just like went legalization, expect them to start their medical program first and then their recreational program and just start looking for who is getting applications, which this is all like public information. Once you go on the Department of Health of whichever state you think you might want to go to, they have the cannabis information there, and
Mhm.
you can see like who's getting licensing, who's working with who's coming in from an MSO. Because at the end of the day, people are looking for people who are interested in working for cannabis. Like, so if you like that's half the job, because if you're interested, then you're motivated. If you're motivated, then you'll do what needs to be done to get where you want to go within the industry.
And there's a lot of people who are bringing in skill sets from other industries, even that can be applied in cannabis that they may have not even thought of yet. Because some people I talk to them about, because I feel like a lot of people's idea also in cannabis is that it's only of the retail space. Like the only thing that they think of when they like first think of weed is like, oh, a dispensary or flower or something like that. But there's a whole, like you kind of said, like back end on the cannabis space that no, there's every type of position and every other corporate structure. Cannabis has those positions also somewhere there.
It's needed. Like when you think about, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, but we're
Right.
lucky that it's a business with weed, you know. But you know, they still need a project manager. They still need a marketing director. They still need a creative director. They still need people to actually, you know, build the functionality of it. And I feel like that was missing very early for a lot of companies that were started in the industry. They were like, oh, it's just weed.
Right.
You know, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, so now you're not keeping employees because you don't got a management style to understand that it's not just weed. Like it's like people that are like consuming it. It's a lifestyle. And if you don't align yourself with it, you're gonna lose customers, people. It's a balance. So you know, I think one thing that people need to think about is like product development is the only thing that keeps cannabis legit, because there's different products that are affecting people differently, that are actually have more efficacy or have more science technology that's applied to it. So if people really want to get in cannabis, like that's going to be the most longevity part of the business is product development, you know, product.
Because no matter what brand name is on there, they're going to need what that hot new product is or whatever is coming out. They're going to need to sell it. So, and they're going to need help with creating it. So I completely agree with that. What would you say is like kind of the hardest thing about working in the cannabis space in Michigan? What's that frustrating thing that kind of grinds your gears if you want to talk about that? I'm sure there's a few things, but we won't stay on the negative too long. But
I'd say immediately I would love Michigan to be more strict in their regulation. When I came in, I felt like I kept getting like cross-eyed because I was expecting a higher level of compliance or a higher level of functionality that I was familiar with leaving Maryland. I think I was probably spoiled with the fact that when we first opened in Maryland, that we had an inspection every month for the first year. And so they were checking visitor logs. They were checking video recordings to make sure that the people who we said came in at the times for the visitor logs actually came in at those times. They were checking key swipes, you know, for scanning. It was so granular that coming here, I was like, wait, what why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? And, you know, please don't hurt me, you know, CRA, but I haven't seen my inspector in a year. So that doesn't mean that I've lacklustered our compliance, but it just means that like, if I wanted to even make sure that we were correct or like, you know, following the right practices to make sure we're compliant, you know, I don't have a partner from the state that's like, that we're working together on that.
And I just think that's almost unfair. That's almost unfair because like if somebody pops in after like 15 months and then all of a sudden you don't really realize that something's changed or you're supposed to be in a certain type of like setting that you're not in, like it could have been like that for a long time at that point.
100%. Like I think when I also, you know, getting here now, a lot of people knew how to navigate the website, you know, to pull up the regulations or pull up the different bulletins of them updating the regulations. So I just think that, you know, launching a medical state, I feel like needs to be taken a lot more seriously than what people are seeing like in California now, what people see in Colorado. Those are mature states that like had those had the industry very early. So where people are looking at them like, oh, it's so laid back. It's like it took them like 10 years to get there. You know, it took them 5 years to get there.
Struggling.
You know, so
it's like still struggling quite a bit actually out there now in Colorado specifically.
So we have a lot of people leaving Colorado and looking for, places in Maryland, looking for places in Michigan. And I'm just like, if this went federal, if federal legalization happened, I think we would have a lot more, I guess, a flow of how things should be going instead of people trying to adopt different states' practices, because that's what every state's doing now. When you look at their regulations, they always say, "Oh, adopted by Washington, or adopted by Florida, or adopted by something that's already, working." I'm just like, man, let just someone come in here and do it right and be like, it just, just needs to be super compliant.
Yeah, when it's federal, it's going to be interesting because I was talking about that with somebody today, that they can't add a tax on top of what has already been taxed, because it would like destroy all the businesses. 'Cause a lot of businesses almost can't exist with like the current tax structure and stuff. So they're gonna have to
Yeah,
like
well,
completely like be like all y'all's laws and null, and like this is how we're gonna do it for all 50 states or something. It's gonna be interesting.
yeah, I see that. Definitely. There's like, we already got the state taxes that are making it pretty expensive. And then we
Right.
have the federal tax going to just stack on top of that.
Because the
I
only
just want
comparison that
something.
we really have right now that could set up how we have it is like Canada, and Canada doesn't have like any like provincial, their version, like state taxes. It's just one big federal tax, which is much lower than ours would be. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting how they decide to do like that, the federal legalization.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would like that. I think other thing is people are looking for it to be descheduled so they could just be, bought in the grocery store, you know. And I
Yeah,
don't think
that's what they're scared of.
that's what they're scared of. That's what they don't want, which I'm like, come
Yeah.
on, guys. Like, what is freedom? What is real freedom? I feel
Yeah.
like if we had the deschedulization, they wouldn't like close down the dispensaries. I feel like you could operate within like some type of regulation, but people wouldn't want to do it when you could buy it from the grocery store.
Yeah.
So
But I think like liquor is pretty like cut and dry, and alcohol is pretty cut and dry. And obviously, it's not the same thing because a canned beverage is way easier to regulate than a plant. But at the same time, they'll develop some type of general regulation that pretty much everybody abides by, I think,
they'll come
eventually.
up with some growing method to like standardize growing cannabis.
Exactly.
They'll do that first, and
Exactly.
then they'll be like, come and get your whatever they can do for liquor. It's like, this is your
Right.
upper. But
Yeah.
that's why I really appreciate that psilocybin's coming very soon too.
Oh, I
you
always
know
appreciate that for
so as
sure.
much as like that's getting standardized, we got a whole nother plant we got to start learning about, and getting familiar
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, for sure. So in the can, I asked you about kind of the things that kind of suck or not as great in the market. What's your favorite thing day to day about being able to work in the cannabis space? Like what
People,
motivates you to go to work?
the people. I feel like I feel like people is motivation for me in general. Like I'm very service oriented. I grew up in the church. I was a pew baby, so my mom had me helping the elders, and that's just my life. So coming in, and I think working in the industry, just seeing how people light up when you give them information on things that like there was dark for them, like just not knowing. I think it was such a like anxiety that people have when they come into the dispensary, and to like let them know,
Right.
like, wait a minute, this is a light situation, we're chilling, all right, you don't even got to be
Yeah,
stressed out or be anxious,
I hear
we're here
you.
to like let you know what's going on. We're not going to give you nothing that is going to whack you out. We start low and slow. So I really love the people. They motivate me. They're so happy. They treat my team members, right. Sometimes,
Mhm.
sometimes, not gonna say
Right.
everybody's perfect, but I mean, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, you come in here to buy weed, all right, your day's about to get way better than it did when you first walked in. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Got you. And my last question for you is gonna be, what's your favorite way to consume? Like if you get to choose out of everything, how are you gonna consume? Are you gonna roll it up or pins or edibles, or what do you
I'm
like?
very traditional. I'm a roll up type of guy. Which
Yeah.
is really funny because every time I talk about it, people are like, "You don't look like you smoke," and I'm like, "That's not right." All right, like why would we do that in the cannabis industry? We really about to like stigmatize how people like look to consume, like really? But no, I'm a traditional guy, but I do believe to keep your tolerance like just on flux. You always gotta try different stuff. You always gotta keep it fresh. So I like to try all the different stuff, 100%.
Absolutely.
But I
Well,
roll.
Blake, I hear you. Blake, I appreciate you joining me on today's episode of the Midwest Cannabis Podcast. This was
My
a dope,
pleasure. I'm
dope
happy you're doing
conversation.
this. I'm happy you're doing this. I'm so glad I get to see you, and
Oh
glad
yeah,
people like me are doing this,
yes,
so
sir.
very happy. Continue to
Absolutely.
work. If we need to do a sesh from me popping out of the dispensary, let me know.
Okay.
I can be your feet in Michigan.
That's a bet. That's a bet.
All
I
right.
appreciate that, Blake.
Definitely.
Guys, everybody who joined for today's episode, definitely appreciate you tuning in. And go hit up Blake at Green Koi.
Thank you
Appreciate it,
guys.
guys.
Please, definitely, if you're in Michigan, stop by Green Koi. We'll have 2 locations by the end of the year, and definitely you can ask for me. I'll take care of you.
That's a bet. Appreciate it, Blake. Appreciate it, guys.